You're listening to RealAgriculture.com. Get real, get connected.
All right, so we are here at the Canadian Forage and Grasslands Association Conference. I am joined by Clayton Robbins, and you're the Executive Director of the Manitoba Forage Council,
Yep.
a farmer, and also a speaker today. But what I want to talk about is your Nuffield Scholarship. So tell us about what all that entailed.
Well, it's a phenomenal opportunity. It was something I knew about. My previous career was a researcher with Ag Canada, and we'd had some Nuffield scholars through over the years. And when I knew I was leaving Ag Canada, there were still a few things I wanted to learn about forages and sugars and plants and stuff that I'd come across in my time as a researcher. And I saw it as a great opportunity to maybe try and help find those answers. So anyways, I applied and was very fortunate, and I'm very privileged to be chosen as a Nuffield scholar, and it allowed me the opportunity to experience things and meet people and see things that I never dreamed was even possible. So it was a very profound journey. Lots of new friends and lots of really great contacts around the world now. So,
what did you focus your research on?
It was on what I call energy-dense forages. Initially, it was looking at sugars and plants, but I realized very quickly into my study that I needed to look at stuff far beyond that, and it branched into everything from looking at rumen physiology, ruminant nutrition, all the way through to building soil, regenerating soil, and even energetics and genomics. So it was really important. I thought at the end that I had a very overarching view of the role that an energy-dense forage could play in our beef model in Canada. And I tried to bring that all together in my report. So started at sugars and went far beyond, which is what most Nuffielders say happens a lot, that you get into it and realize there was so much more to your topic than you ever dreamed of.
So what is an energy-dense forage?
Well, it's a forage that certainly has a very improved profile for compounds like lipids, digestible fiber, and what I really like to see in Canada here is sugars. I think we've really underestimated our potential for how much sugar we can get in a plant if we're using the right ones. Western Canada is really blessed compared to a lot of the other jurisdictions in the world. We have a lot of solar intensity. Places that grow a lot of forage and are known to be grazing countries are quite overcast or rainy, and that's an advantage we have, that we're a little bit drier, but we've got long days, we've got cool evenings, and huge solar intensity. And I think that's a massive benefit. In fact, my area where I live in Rivers, they built an air base there during the Second World War because we had the most cloudless hours of sunlight in Western Canada. So I've got solar intensity. And we had sugars that we know were in the 40s in the plants even as late as October last year in 2014.
So what did you see around the world in your travels for use of energy-dense forages?
Certainly the ryegrasses were a huge crop for a lot of places. I mean, it's a main forage. There's a lot of work being done on improving the sugar content of those varieties within the species. But really got me spun in my head was some time down in Australia and New Zealand with other crops like chicory and plantain, and to a certain extent actually in Argentina as well. And the data from Peter Kemp and folks like that were showing just phenomenal levels of animal performance with these herb-based mixes. They call them herbs. So you would have plants like chicory and plantain and a legume in the bottom like a white clover or red clover, and then these really, really good, highly digestible grasses. And the data was pretty hard to ignore. And it spun off into improved efficiencies in reducing methane emissions out of the cattle and capturing more protein instead of passing it out the back end as urea in the urine. So there's all these other environmental spin-off benefits as well as improved performance.
So did you bring some of those home? What are some species you've planted on your farm?
Yes, I'm working right now with a tetraploid Italian ryegrass or Festuloleum. I like the Festuloleum, which is a hybrid of ryegrass and fescue, as well as a chicory. I'm in my third year now with chicory, and tried plantain for the first time. And the chicory I'm watching, I was quite shocked it overwintered very well. And have come now to realize that it's quite an invasive species, so I'll have to be very careful how I go ahead with it, but the grazing benefits I'm getting are fantastic. And we're working on some saline ground and turning it around very quickly. Our organic matter is already improved by almost a full percent, and the quality of that soil and where it's growing plants in places it didn't before is just amazing in 4 years. But the red clover wouldn't work with that level of salinity. So we've gone to a sweet clover, and it's working very, very well for a bit of nitrogen fixation. Again, a good taproot, and a nitrogen supply to help digest the plantain.
So today in your talk you showed a graph of kind of how an ideal year of grazing looks for you. Walk us through that briefly.
Yeah, well, what I'm suggesting, and it went back to some trials that we did in Brandon and back to a bit of philosophy that kind of popped out of my head, was to look at moving our swath grazing up earlier in the year and using our annuals much earlier to eliminate grazing on perennial forages in the really critical acclimation period, which I think now is much wider with the climate change we're seeing. I think it's much wider than we ever thought it was before. So looking at getting off perennial forage in August, September, and October, maybe even to early November, and using a blend of annuals to do that. So, look at your early typical spring grazing on your perennial forages, move to those 3 months into something like it's an annual, stretch it as long as you can into the fall, and then go back to your stockpile perennial forages, which you can graze when they're dormant and do a lot less damage. You still do some, but a lot less. And then go into some other extended grazing techniques after that. So.
And you found that sort of preserves some of the quality of the swath grazing as well?
Yeah, we moved to where we tried putting the swath into small square bales, which was working really, really well and still really good uniform distribution of nutrients. And this year, for the first time, we went to a round bale haylage, putting up, it's a little bit bigger bale, and it might be concentrating some nutrients around the bale. But so far, I've been pretty happy. The animals are still walking around and depositing urine and feces fairly broadly around the field. So I think it's not as bad as I was worried about. But I know I'm preserving the quality of my overstory crop, which is a cereal, in a much higher quality than if I'd left it as a swath, because we have measured significant quality losses in swaths through the wet part of the summer. So.
For sure. So if people want to read more about your Nuffield scholarship and your report, where can they find that?
It's under the Nuffield Canada website or the Nuffield International, and you just go under the 2013 Scholar Reports and look up my name, Robbins, 1B in Robbins. Everybody looks, it's usually spelled with 2, but we're the anomaly. So make sure you spell the last name right, or just look up energy dense forages and the report will pop up.
Clayton Robbins, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.